Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Monday, March 11th, 2013, and I'm Darko. So this first article I have for you is the 2,800 pigs dumped in Shanghai River raises concern. Most of you have already seen this in the mainstream media. It's to demonize China, and God forbid if you go in there and check out some of the factory farms and what's going on in there in America. The point of showing this article is what their people are not seeing, which is a story like this that occurred January 30th. Well, it didn't occur on January 30th, but right around there. 2013, over 200 Syrians killed in Aleppo, 80 bodies found in river. So nothing was done by the, quote, international community, and all these human rights don't said a damn thing about it. Of course, the Free Syrian Army, which are basically foreigners and terrorists and mercenaries, has claimed that it was the regime, the Assad regime. But it says, on the other hand, a security source in the Syrian government said that the dead bodies found in the Quelq River are the bodies of citizens from the Bustan al-Qasr district, adding that terrorist groups kidnapped them for being loyal to the ruling regime. And it was in a rebel-held district where it occurred. But in doing so, and looking at that news and looking for that article, I found another article, and it's the same type of story. It just happened. Syrian rebels, 20 bodies found in Aleppo's river. It says here, bodies found in the same spot as previous massacres. Syrian rebels reported 20 more bodies have been found. It said in Aleppo's river, sorry, it's a typo, turning up in the rebel-held Bustan al-Qasr neighborhood. They're insisting that the bodies were killed by security forces and dumped in the water. They were found in the exact same spot as the previous incident in late January, in which 81 bodies of executed young men who were previously reported kidnapped by the rebel al-Nusra Front. The rebels insist most of the time that the bodies have been found in that river, it is because they were killed upstream in the government-held neighborhood in central Aleppo. Such incidences have become increasingly common across Syria, and the lack of media on the ground leaves it often unclear who is killing them, so there should be an outcry for that. But Syrian rebels rescued, not abducted, says UN workers. So remember I was talking about how before this was even mainstream news about these UN workers becoming basically kidnapped by the rebels, that they were kidnapped by the rebels because we covered that they had control over the whole border, the Israeli-Syrian border. So it was most likely them, rebel-held. We also covered an article specifically relating to kidnapping by the rebels to fund their terrorist activities of carrying out regime change for the West. But this takes the cake right here, this story I saw. And this was March 8th, so it was right on Friday night after I posted those uploads. A Syrian rebel group that first claimed it abducted a group of UN observers from the Golan Heights announced Thursday it was rescuing it from fighting. So they didn't kidnap them for ransom, they were rescuing them, that's right. An interesting twist here with the story. It says here a video that accompanied Wednesday's post in which the kidnappers said the observers would not be released until Syrian President Assad withdrew troops from the area was deleted. So pretty interesting. Is this like the West kind of blackmailing the UN or the Syrian government by using the UN because their proxy forces are losing, i.e. the Free Syrian Army. It says with God's help we managed to secure a group of UN members working in the border town after they were victims of the criminal shelling of the Assad's gangs, a statement posted. So, God willing, they said, we request from the United Nations to send us a security convoy so that we can deliver them to the organization. Captive Ukrainian journalist escapes Syrian rebels. So it says here, after 5 months of captivity and fear of execution, the Ukrainian journalist has safely escaped from Syrian rebels. So, relatives and friends of the journalist managed to escape the building she was kept in. It says here, and hid from pursuers in the mountains. She then had to walk about 15 kilometers before reaching Syrian army forces and is now traveling to Damascus in safety. In two brief interviews, she said the captors mistreated her and decided to run away for the fear that they would kill her and blame the government forces for another death. Despite this, the journalist vowed to remain in Syria and continue to highlight the ongoing conflict. She was quoted saying, "The world is just blind. I will definitely do everything for these people to discover what is really going on here." Saying Syria is a friend in need. Al-Qaeda claims killing 48 Syrian soldiers in Iraq. So, again, this is something that we covered and we called it out for what it was. It was the Free Syrian Army and their Al-Qaeda links that killed Syrian forces as they were heading from Iraq across the border after chasing the rebels out of Syria back into there, and they got slaughtered. Al-Qaeda affiliate group in Iraq has claimed responsibility for last week's killing of 48 Syrian soldiers and 9 Iraqi guards in western Anbar province. The group said the fighters launched an attack from 2 directions using light and medium-range weapons as well as rocket-propelled grenades. Within less than a half an hour, the whole convoy was annihilated. Al-Qaeda acts as reserve forces of the U.S. across Iraq. So analysis says Al-Qaeda has definitely increased its bombing activities in Iraq in the recent days, and that they serve the interests of the American and Western powers. Throughout their history from Afghanistan to Iraq to Syria, now with the so-called al-Nusra in Syria, they serve the interests of the American and Western powers in the region and try to ignite a sectarian war not only in Iraq, but in Syria and Lebanon, and to prepare an attack on Iran in the future as well. Speaking of Afghanistan, that's in the mainstream media. Karzai coming out saying some things that most people in the alternative media are aware of. But he's doing this, of course, for what? To get what he wants, which is he wants a piece of the action, talking about the drug trade. He's not getting enough, apparently. But this is news for most people that just watch regular television, right? Because they can't really, what are they going to do with this headline? I mean, how can they water it down? How much can they water it down and cloud the issue? Well, they will, and they'll try to in the articles. But Karzai claims CIA-trained Afghans seize students. So Afghan president is denouncing the seizure of a university student by armed Afghans that a spokesman says works for the CIA. So he told the AP on Sunday that the CIA freed the student after Karzai's staff intervened. But it says here, but Fazeh says Karzai wants the armed Afghans arrested and will ban foreign forces from universities. So it says raiders fired shots as they grabbed the student Saturday from a Kandahar university. He says they interrogated him at a CIA post that Taliban leader Mullah Omar once used as a home. The CIA could not be reached for a comment. Of course they couldn't. Karzai says Taliban in service to America. So Cryptagon says, my guess is that Karzai probably perceives that he's not getting a big enough cut of the opium pie. So Afghans' frying ties with the U.S. hits a new low on Sunday, as President Karzai said before meeting the U.S. Defense Secretary that Taliban kills civilians in service of America. Interesting, it says it was in the service of foreigners not withdrawing from Afghanistan. So there you go. Another title, another way to put it, was the Afghan-Taliban three-card Monte. Draw American resources into the country to protect lucrative drug trade. So. Then you have ISAF chief rejects Afghan president remarks on the U.S. Taliban collusion. Says Karzai has never said to me that the United States was colluding with the Taliban. Well, why would he? All I can do is speak for the coalition to tell you that it's categorically false and that we have no reason to be colluding with the Taliban, he said. He added that we have no reason to be supporting instability in Afghanistan. Well, you do, because then you could have a presence so you can maintain the drug trade or whatever other trade or resources or political reason you need to be there. You send the terrorists there. You collude with the Taliban that you help create. That NATO kills Afghan actor in Southwest airstrike. So militants captured actor on suspicious of spying. So it says here that they accuse him of being a spy for government forces against the drug industry. The accusation likely stems directly from Helmadi's film careers. His movies were overwhelmingly about the drug trade in southwestern Afghanistan. He was being interrogated at the time of the strike. This latest incident is going to add to the complaints about the number of civilians being killed in the occupation and the apparent lack of care taken to ensure that civilians like Helmadi weren't in the line of fire before attacking. Mali war disrupts cocaine supply to Europe. So France's surprise intervention, I'm sure it wasn't a surprise to them or the international community or think tanks in northern Mali against the Islamist fighters involved in lucrative drug running has disrupted cocaine supply to Europe, but smugglers are already finding new routes. 75 planes with 3,000 tons of weapons left Croatia for Syria. So more details have been revealed in the Croatian arms to Syria scandal after the world media reported that Saudi Arabia has financed a large purchase of infantry weapons from Croatia and secretly transported them to anti-government fighters in Syria. It's similar to that, I don't even want to call it a leak because I don't think most leaks are even really leaks. They're just put out there as disinformation. But it's worth considering is the email by Western powers, and that about planting a bomb, basically made in Ukraine, and blaming it on the Russians. They didn't say blame it on Russians, but basically getting chemical weapons in Syria to go off and blame Assad's government and link it back to Russia, and of course Hezbollah, right? That's the whole thing, and then Iran. So this is just another way I see them doing that. And just a follow-up story on Afghanistan, U.S. claims security concerns as Karzai cancels Hagel meet. So Afghan government assists scheduling conflict behind sudden cancellation. U.S. expels 2 Venezuelan diplomats in tit-for-tat action. So it says here that they expelled 2 Venezuelan diplomats in retaliation for Caracas's removal of 2 U.S. military attaches last week. So they expelled the 2 U.S. officials last week for meeting with Venezuelan military officials and plotting to destabilize the oil-rich South American country. He accused this individual, an Air Force attaché for the U.S. Embassy in Venezuela, of seeking military assistance for a plot against the government, adding that Del Monaco had been spying on Venezuela's military outfits. I kind of like this comment. I think it's hilarious. It's an honor to be expelled by the United States. North Korea makes good on threat. So, South Korea mulls acquiring its own nukes. Well, I'm sure if they don't already, they've already mulled it by their proxy occupier, the U.S., just like the Russia occupier of the North Korea. But it's interesting how they titled it, because they said North Korea makes good on threat. Well, they're just basically reacting to something that was done against them, which was sanctions and threats. So, and provoking, so kind of like with Russia with the Magnitsky Act, and then pulling the adoptions, allowing adoptions in the United States from Russia. It's not that they're going on the attack, it's that they're reacting to something, an action taken against them. But that's how they like to word it in these articles. So it says South Korea and the United States began their annual war games. Actually, they're monthly war games. They hold, like I said, games almost every month. So it's not just annual. North Korea basically canceled the 1953 armistice agreement that ended the Korean War. If the U.S. has nuclear weapons, why can't we? So this is coming to independence, so people in the UK and U.S. are supposed to say, oh, because you're evil. You're an evil axis of evil. North Korea's nuclear test drew international censure, but Pyongyang rejoice says here that convinced that South Korea has over 800 nuclear warheads pointing their way, people in the North believe the nuclear weapons are essential for safety of their country. Remember, just recently they've had 2 tests in a week. Pakistan basically firing off missiles that were capable of carrying nuclear warheads, but was never covered because North Korea was all about coverage. And Jordan, not much news on this. Jordan close to commissioning 2 nuclear reactors, but it declines to sign a accord with the United States. Jordan is close to commissioning 2 nuclear reactors, so it's going to be built south of the Syrian border. There's nothing, everything it says in here is about, it's about dependence on oil and gas, energy, nothing about nuclear weapons. But with Iran, it's a different story. UN official Hans Blix, Iran nuke threat is overhyped. The threat from Iran is overhyped, and there's no evidence to suggest the Islamic Republic is even interested in developing nuclear weapons, according to UN official. This guy was ahead of all kinds of agencies and stuff, including the Bush administration. He's previously explained that Iran is operating under the perception of a threat, and in a way, the Iranians have been more open to international inspections than most other countries would be. South Africa pushing to host proposed BRICS Bank. South Africa's chances of playing a significant role in the mooted BRICS Bank now dependent on the president. So while the country will have no chance to host the bank, it says it now has negotiations at the level of the president, among BRIC member countries including Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which aspires to be an alternative economics and politics club, basically an alternative to NATO or the EU. Pakistan starts work on Iranian gas line opposed by the United States, so bad Pakistan and bad Iran. There was a much delayed gas pipelines finally getting going. They call it a peace pipeline. Libyan Islamists in this free and democratic country that the West created arrest and torture 48 Christians. Pakistan, which was basically chopped up and created by the West. It says here, Christians police clash in Pakistan after Muslim mob burns homes of minority religious group. Wahhabi invasion. This is in South Asia. Saudi charities pump in huge funds through channels to radicalize the valley. Saudi problem, not enough swordsmen for executions. Firing squads now an acceptable alternative. Thank you.